how has the level of intimacy changed between the two of you over that time period? And what have you done to keep it strong and deep and alive? Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message. If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show. Kristy Robinett works as both a psychic medium and an astrologer. She employs her psychic abilities to aid in police investigations as well as providing readings and conducting workshops. Kristy speaks nationwide and often contributes to the media, making appearances on various platforms, including Restless Souls on ID Channel, Fox News, ABC News, Coast to Coast, and others. Kristy Robinett has authored several books, which include Born Under a Good Sign, It's a Wonderful Afterlife, and Embrace Your Empathy. She co-hosts the Robinett's Nest podcast and the recently launched Grave Matters podcast with her husband, Chuck. Chuck is Kristy's event assistant and partner in crime. He's got a flair for design and style thanks to being surrounded by a lot of estrogen for many years. He is the king of useless knowledge, especially when it comes to music and sports. Join us as we learn how these empty nesters have navigated everything life has thrown at them and how they continue to laugh, question, and celebrate a raucous journey together.
Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. It is a first on Kickass Couples Nation because we have somebody who probably already knows what I'm going to say. And I know it's a horrible joke, Kristy, and you probably get that all the time. But we have a person who is a psychic and a medium and has done some pretty amazing things in her life with her faithful, trusty sidekick, the man. We want to welcome Chuck Robinett to the Kickass Couples Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today. We are excited to get this podcast started with you. And we like to come right out of the gate, right away, asking the question, what makes you a kick-ass couple? And so, Chuck, I think I'm going to ask you first. What do you think makes you and Kristy a kick-ass couple?
Familiarity, I think, more than anything else. It's very odd. I know a lot of couples, people that have been married have been together a long time. They're able to finish each other's sentences, but we do it all the time. And it comes to the point where we'll just look at each other like, I used to yell, not really yell, but say, hey, can I have my own thoughts once in a while? But that's just the way it is. We're connected that way. Very much so.
That's awesome. So you guys really have a deep connection on a totally different level of sort of language that's unspoken, which is great. So. How about for you, Kristy? What would you say makes you a kick-ass couple?
We're super committed to one another. We always have been. We've been on the same page with raising our kids. We're a blended family. And so there is some trouble that sometimes goes with that I've seen in the past, but we've always been on the same page with how we wanted to raise them and how we wanted to couple with one another too. We experienced all the bad before, so we knew what not to do, and we took all of those lessons and turned that into a really honest and healthy relationship.
Yeah, very much so.
And blended
And he's
families.
accepting. And, that's the one thing is he's accepting. So it's really interesting to go on a first date with someone who's a psychic medium and tell them they're a psychic medium, because that could be so perceived as, scary or frightening or what have you. And he pretty much was like, can you pass the ketchup? So.
Yeah, definitely was no exit stage left. Nothing fazed me with any of that. So.
Yeah.
What I want to know, Chuck, what was when you found that out? You didn't know that before the first date?
Oh, no.
So tell me how you handled that? I mean, because that sounds, I mean, it's unusual, but how did you respond to that? And then was it ever an issue in your relationship?
Well, just like she had said, pass the ketchup. Basically, that's what I said. We were at a restaurant. We were on the first date, and she told me. And again, I was not moved. I was not fazed. It was like, oh, okay, cool. Would you pass the ketchup? And that's basically what happened. I never doubted anything. I mean, why would she lie to me about any of that stuff? And later on, within a week or two, I guess it was, she kind of did a reading for me. And I thought she was crazy because she was coming up with stuff that was like, what? She says, I see legal papers. I see a badge. I see this. I see that. And I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. And I kind of like blew it off. But needless to say, very soon afterwards, I got pulled over and, I was arrested because I was driving on a suspended license that I didn't know was
that
suspended.
He never even knew was suspended. So I tried to protect him from that. He's not a criminal. He's not a felon, I promise.
We're good. Everything's cleared up. It was kind of a mistake. But regardless.
I was concerned. I thought I might see your picture in the post office.
No post office. No, America's Most Wanted for sure.
But I also brought through, so I'm a medium, so I see those that have crossed over to the other side that are in heaven. And I also have brought through people that I didn't know from his past or from his family and been able to validate for him who was around him and such too. He really doesn't like me to do readings for him though, since that.
Because of that. I always have said, and I've told it to other people when they've asked questions like that, it's like, okay, if I'm going to get hit by a bus, let me know so I can stay away from buses. Otherwise, I don't want to know anything.
Sure. Yeah. Was that reading solicited or unsolicited when you got it?
It was solicited.
Yeah. You're curious.
Yeah. I was like, okay, how do you do it? That's basically what I wanted to know. We're sitting at the kitchen table and there we go.
I'm like, what aren't you telling me?
What aren't you telling me? And I'm looking at her like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Right. Didn't know.
At that moment, she was a little woo.
Well, you question it. You think, wow, well, maybe she's just off. Maybe she's wrong. She wasn't off. She wasn't wrong.
Keep you out of jail, Chuck. That's love. That's commitment.
The beauty of it was she came and bailed me out. So I guess it's a good thing.
I did bail him out too.
If she was mad at me, I'd still probably be there. But life goes on.
Oh, this is awesome.
You would still be there.
So. I think that I kind of like to go back here, sure. And I really think, and Kim and I both feel this way, that we are kind of products of the people that raised us. Right. And so what I'd love to know, and Kristy, I'm going to ask if we can start with you. When you were growing up, what did love look like in your family with your parents or whoever raised you? How did you see love demonstrated? And what was kind of the picture that was modeled to you in a relationship about that expression of love?
I unfortunately was sort of raised in a dysfunctional family. My dad was very traditional. It was military. I was the oops child. And then I was also the one that could see spirits, and my parents were extremely religious. So I was a little bit of the black sheep. My mom had mental health issues. They loved one another and they loved me the way that they could love me. And like I said before, I think that we take all of the things that we didn't like in our past relationships and we form ourselves to do better than that. So I don't regret any of that, or I don't hold my parents accountable, if you will, for the way that they had raised me in the household that I was in. But I didn't want to repeat their unhealthy patterns that they had. My dad was my person. My mom was jealous because he was my person. He actually lived with us for almost all of our marriage. The beginning of, and he passed away last year. But he was stubborn and strong-willed, and his love language wasn't warm and fuzzy, and my mom was warm and fuzzy, and so they just didn't melt together. So I wanted somebody who had similar love languages, or at least would be willing to understand what my language was or my needs were. But it was dysfunctional,
Sure.
but still loving. Still loving.
Right. They had, well, what I hear you saying is they each had love for you. They just expressed it very differently and
with each other.
And then you probably, sounds like we all take things we like and things we don't like, but from what I hear you saying is there are a lot of things you didn't like that you said, hey, I want to do it differently. When
Unfortunately, there was probably more that I disliked than I liked there.
Sure.
But as we get older, we understand the situations. The situations were just different, and mental health situations were just different. My mom was blind. My mom went blind when I was 12. So that was hard on the whole family. I had to be her caregiver. My dad had to be the caregiver. He ended up having a heart attack when I was 18, right as soon as I went off to college. So I had to quit college to then take care of both of them. So it was, they were both just their lives. They were only 40 something years old, 50 years old. And it was like their lives were over because of the medical issues that they had.
Wow. Sounds like you didn't have, you had to grow up quickly.
Yes.
And become the parent to your parents. And it's tough to take away a lot of things for yourself when you're so busy providing for
it's
other
hard. You go through caregiver burnout for sure. And I'm still recovering from that since my dad's passing, that learning that it's okay for me to play and I need to stop feeling like I'm responsible for everybody else's happiness. So I'm still in that sort of therapy of learning with it.
Right.
Even though I tell my clients to do that, I don't always take my own advice.
Right. It's hard. It's hard. Chuck, how about you? What did love look like for you growing up in your family?
Probably worse than hers. I'm a little bit older than she is, but my dad left. My folks fought all the time. He left when I was 5 or 6. So they didn't get legally divorced till I was 14. But my mother had to work, and then he was a musician, and he was always busy. I think when I was younger, my father did not know basically how to be a father. He was more preoccupied with his career and what he had going on. And my mother, kind of the same way. She was just more preoccupied with her life than me. So I guess I kind of felt like I was just more in the way than anything else. And pretty much I probably was until at least I got older. But it's strange because they were nothing alike except for the bond of music. They had that together. But on my dad's side, they were all really affectionate. And I spent most of my time with them, with my grandparents and my aunt. And on my mom's side, they were more proper old English or Irish. My great-grandparents, they were in their 90s at that time. And they weren't much huggy, kissy type of thing. You know, they cared, they loved, but it was a different situation. One side drank, the other side didn't drink. One side was more religious than the other. It was just different. But I kind of more or less raised myself for the most part, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But he had his grandparents that raised him as well. I didn't have a support system. There was no grandparents. He had his grandma and grandpa where he would go on the weekends.
And I spent all my summers with my grandparents at a cottage in Canada. So I was lucky in that respect. And my mother was probably thrilled to death to get me out of the house for 3 months. So
Sure.
That way she could go on with her things. But at least I had that. And then I had an uncle that was really close to. And unfortunately, at least for me, of course, I was older. I was in my late teens. My grandfather, that one grandfather, he passed away first. And then my uncle passed away within the year. So both of my, I don't want to say father figures, but the two people I was probably closest to, at least being raised, they were both gone. So
Sure.
I got, with my father, we had our ons and offs. And I had a lot of grudges. And it's really strange that I would kind of fight it, but then we kind of reconciled, and he got sick. He ended up with cancer, and I still kind of held grudges after he passed away. He left in 94, and when I turned 50, he came to Kristy one night and as in a visit and explained why he did the things he did and that he didn't know how to be a father.
He had me write a letter to him.
So he wrote me a letter, had her write me the letter when I turned 50 and explained everything. And after that, everything was fine. It was gone. It was done. And no sense holding grudges. I understood why he did the things that he did.
Sure.
So
it sounds like, you guys each had a pretty difficult or challenging, finding your own way and figuring out what you had to do together. So tell me, how did the two of you come together with each of those backgrounds and form what is now today? You've been married over 30 years. Did I hear you say?
20
years. So how did you take those two disparate backgrounds and bring them together for one that's working for you today?
Yeah, because you think, okay, are we trauma bonding, right? That's the first thing, is we're both coming from dysfunctional upbringings. I think that when we met, though, we were mature. We had already had a past relationship. We had already had kids. We had already kind of experienced the things that we shouldn't do in relationships. We had grown up through that. So we had, again, have a better understanding of the conflict that we had endured, and we had made a promise that we weren't going to do that. Like, one of the first things that I told him is my ex would always threaten divorce anytime we got into a fight, that it would be, I'm leaving you. And so I said, one of the stipulations, if we have conflict, the D word can't be mentioned because that's a trigger for me. And so we kind of set up parameters of what the healthy relationship for us, attuned to the dysfunction of our families and the dysfunction of our past marriages, had been as well.
And so you had those conversations before you got married? Is that what I hear you saying?
Maybe before and also during the beginning.
And we still do.
Yeah, it never ends. There's
An
always that
ongoing
communication.
conversation.
We had both been through bad marriages that lasted pretty long. Mine was almost 11 years. Yours was at least 10, right?
Yeah.
So we were the victims in both of those, per se, and neither marriage was good. So I had 2 kids. She had 2 kids. When I got divorced, all of my efforts went towards my children. I stopped dating. I didn't want to be bothered with anybody else, just raising my girls. And then at one point I finally said, okay, now I've got to do something for me. And we ended up going on a blind date. But I knew, though, honestly, that when I would go on this date with her, that we were going to be married. Otherwise I wouldn't have done it. It's just really weird how that works.
So you just knew in your heart that
Otherwise I would not have done what I did.
And the interesting thing is, we both say neither of us were one another's types, we had in our head.
No.
And yet we were exactly what one another needed.
Right.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now, so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Sure.
And trust me, she's my type now.
I'm glad you figured that out.
That's nice after 20 years.
Good answer.
Good job.
But no.
We have 14 pillars that we believe it takes to make a successful relationship. And we really focus on 3 of those, which we call the 3 C's. And that is commitment, communication, and conflict resolution. I want to talk a little bit about commitment with the both of you. How does commitment show up in your relationship? And what does that look like within your relationship together?
I think commitment, because everyone probably has a different definition of commitment, Right. So commitment can actually become a little bit codependent for some people, so how it looks. I think that some of that commitment is allowing us to have our own identities, but also having the coupling that kind of goes hand in hand with that as well. And it also, what does, and not to get too dark into this, but what does adultery look like? Is it texting another person? Is it flirting with another person? And we had those conversations, what that looked like for one another.
Boundaries.
That would maybe set someone into a self-esteem situation because of our past. We had both been cheated on. Yeah. So we didn't want to bring all of that into this relationship and have that being problematic. So the commitment of, are we on the same page? Do we believe in the same values? Do we believe in the same parenting structure? That was honestly one of the number one reasons why I fell in love with him, because we had so much in common with what that looked like for each other.
And I hear you saying it's a lot of the little things, all of those little things that all come together to make it one big commitment to each other.
Absolutely.
And we're both usually together. Yeah. I mean, there's not like, okay, I'm going out with the guys or she's going out with the girls. I wouldn't go on a vacation without her and vice versa.
Right.
Even like going to the store. I'll go to the store by myself sometimes because she doesn't like to shop and I'm the shopper. So I'll do that, but for the most part, we're usually always together.
And we like one another together. My girlfriends think it's strange. They're like, I don't know why you're always with him. And it feels like the both of us make that whole energy. So, and it's not codependent, it's just we waited so long to find one another.
True.
Yeah. And your friends also, right? It sounds like you enjoy being in each other's company.
I would say, yeah. I would.
You like each other in addition to
we like and we love one another. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, the second of our 3 C's, as Kim mentioned, is communication. And communication is critical right after commitment. If you've got the commitment, it's like, well, how do you talk about it then, right? So Chuck, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me what is the communication dance look like between you and Kristy? How do you guys relate to each other? And how do you make sure those lines are open? And what do you do to keep it strong?
Well, like I mentioned before, we're an awful lot alike in that respect. We think alike. We come up with the same words. We come up with the same sentences, structures. It's just always on. And the two of us together we're able to communicate because we're both thinking pretty much the same way, and most everything we do.
We are Siamese twins.
Yeah,
apparently,
very much so. Yeah. So I'm going to look at it like that and say, well, that's the biggest thing.
Okay, I will say I'm an emotional communicator. He's very sensitive and emotional too, but I'm an emotional communicator. He's a bit more pragmatic. So he can talk me off the ledge really fast and reground me when I am, being a little bit more of the diva and drama filled. His communication style is a bit more level-headed, I guess I'd say.
Oh, I'd definitely say that.
Okay.
She gets more emotional and I'm very, very even keeled and laid back. And I get that way the older that I get. I wasn't always that way, but it's just the way things are now. And when she gets upset with something, to me, she might be blowing things out of proportion. And I said, well, it could always be worse. There's always something. And usually things work out and there always is going to be something worse.
But the communication's always respectful. It's not like he's talking down to me with regards to that or him, me saying, well, what do you mean? You need to think into the larger spectrum of that. And he trusts, it comes down to trust. He trusts me if I'm thinking something or I'm feeling something or intuitive something. So yeah, we communicate very similarly, but I guess enough different where we aren't Siamese twins.
True.
He's saying we're Siamese twins.
So what I hear you saying is you each have different styles, but those styles complement each other
Yeah.
and give each other what they need. And so kind of along those lines of communication, I'd love to ask you too, what is the best compliment you've received from your spouse? Like, what's the nicest thing they've ever said, each of you has ever said to the other, where you just melted and like, oh my gosh, that just was the best thing I've ever heard? You think of anything?
I can't think of anything.
That sounds terrible.
I
I can
know.
think of 500 things.
But see, that's how she is compared to how I am.
I will say I was never really told, and I'm going to get emotional about this. Growing up, I was never said the words "I'm proud of you" or "what you've done, I'm proud of you for." And he is very communicative with telling me often that he's proud of me for, a book that I wrote or for an accomplishment that I had. And so that really feeds it. I'm a little bit like, this is a really goofy thing, and it's not verbal, but like the other day, this is so ridiculous. The other day we had BLTs and he made the toast. Like, I like it very lightly toasted. He made my toast perfect. Well, he made his toast the way he wanted it. It wasn't like, well, just suck it up and here's the toast that I like. He made my toast the way that I liked it.
You love your toast.
Exactly. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that made my heart sing. It's those small gestures that really kind of soar the compliments. I compliment you all the time.
She does. And I'm not very good with compliments.
He understands me and my toast. And I think that is, such a simple thing that couples sometimes don't, take into account, that it doesn't have to be that verbal compliment, if you will. It can be, he's paying attention to the things that I like or I dislike, and he's following through on that as well. But I said I offer him compliments all the time.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, but I just assume not hear them. And it's not just from her, it's from anybody. I've just never been much like that. When I was younger, I was always looking for acceptance, or I wanted to hear something like that. I never heard it just like her. So you kind of get a thick skin, and again, I'm pretty easygoing with everything. I'm good at blocking things out, and I'm good at holding things in. So we really don't argue. Even when there's something that might set either one of us off, it still doesn't really go into an argument. It's just easier to...
No, we talk about it, but we don't argue.
Right.
Not often.
We don't fight. Not that we never have. I think everyone has, but...
Yeah. That's actually the next of our 3 C's. And that is conflict, resolving conflict, and how you do that. And what I hear you saying, Kristy, is that, he validates you, but he also pays attention to you. And I think that's key, paying attention to your spouse and understanding all those little things that they like, dislike, those little nuances. It is such a great deposit in your emotional bank account when somebody understands you and they pay attention to you.
Yeah, he picks up on everything. And that's the thing that made me really fall in love with him even more, is when we were, just dating, is that, I would say I liked something or I liked that song or what have you, and I would forget that I had said that. And the next thing I know, he's got the CD of, that artist with that song on it, handing it to me. So I'm not necessarily a gift. Like, I don't really want a gift. I'm not a gift person. I don't love gifts. Yeah. That doesn't feed my emotional bank. But it's the thought that goes into that. So yeah, we don't normally fight. I mean, obviously we've had fights. We've had arguments. The kids would say, yes, you guys do. You guys, we always used to fight before our vacation for some strange reason.
It's stressful to get ready to go on vacation.
Well, it is. There's a lot of things that have to be done, and
exactly.
And the kids are like, I don't even want to go now because you guys are
everyone's mad at each other.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about when you do when you do mess up, right? Because we're all going to mess up. We're not perfect. When you do make a mistake, give me an example of maybe a big mistake that was made, and how you approach that. How do you resolve conflict? How would you approach that within your relationship?
I'm not going to be much help because I can't think of anything.
I'm not going to be much help either because I don't think we talk everything through. So I don't think that we have ever had anything where we've felt betrayed
No.
about.
So there aren't big blow-ups because you address the little things as they come along. Is that what I hear you?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, everything, even from the kids to, well, there was one.
Okay, here we go.
There was one. And this was our wedding day.
Oh, okay.
So I went to go get my hair done and he left my kid. We call them our kids now, but my kids who were old enough to be left alone, but they shouldn't have been left alone on the wedding day. And I asked the kids, I'm like, where did he go? And his daughter didn't want us to get married. So she ended up going to the hospital for a sprained ankle. And I'm using parentheses for that because she wanted her mom and her dad together. And she was Disneying this. Like if they saw one another, they'd get back together and we would break the wedding off. And I knew nothing about that. That and also the warrant that was out for his arrest that we talked about before.
She was kind of mad at that. But again, I had no idea.
But we talked it through. I mean, he ended up taking his daughter's, because I said, she was sabotaging this. And he's like, no, not my princess. And later, as years progressed and she matured, she's like, oh, yeah, I definitely tried to sabotage your wedding.
And it didn't matter if it was her or if it was, anybody, the Queen of England. She would have been that way, I think, probably.
Yeah, she was a little bit difficult.
And it wasn't going to happen between her mother and I either. So,
and that was probably our biggest conflicts that we had is when the kids were younger and, going between two houses, both of them, and
all the time,
and trying to deal with that was challenging. But we still talked it over. It wasn't necessarily a big blowout. I was just like, you believe her that she didn't sabotage, really?
Right. So it sounds like the two of you have gotten pretty good at the art of compromise because it doesn't seem like either of you are holding on to any beliefs so strongly, or you're inflexible. You say you talk about it, and it sounds like you're considering each other's viewpoints and opinions, getting agreement, whatever that agreement may be, and moving on. And that's a wonderful, place to be. If more couples were able to approach those disagreements and conflicts in that way, right, they wouldn't maybe have as much relationship ending power as they do. So two of you been together for, you said, about 20 years, right? And so obviously you've seen some changes in yourselves and your bodies and the relationship. How has the level of intimacy changed between the two of you over that time period? And what have you done to keep it strong and deep and alive?
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
We like one another.
Yeah.
Again, we like and love. So Chuck went through a cancer situation right before COVID, and in early 2020, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And he had to go through a stem cell transplant, the longest we'd ever been apart from one another. He had to stay almost a month in the hospital to have that. And I think that also just rebonded the intimacy. I just don't want to be without you.
Right.
So, and it is, life is too short. I think that we say that all the time.
Yeah, it is.
And so whether it's conflict or whether it's intimacy, it's very mature. We make sure that we spend time together. We still do date nights, or we go out.
And it's easier now that the kids are adults and they're all moved out and married themselves. My mother isn't going to be the pain in the butt that she used to be. She passed away. Her dad lived with us. Unfortunately, he's gone too. But it makes things a lot easier because, like she mentioned earlier, she doesn't have to worry about what am I going to do, what am I not going to do.
The
responsibility on either one of our parts, doing either one of our parents. Whatever they needed, we had to do. Again, I was an only child. She might as well have been. So with that being done and them gone to the other side, it makes things a lot, I don't want to say easier, but you don't have to.
But there's freedom. There's freedom within your relationship now that you didn't have before for numerous reasons, kids, family. And so it puts you in a different place.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So, we can, if I want to go to bed at 7 p.m., I can go to bed at 7 p.m. and not have to answer to anybody, I guess, and I could tell him, hey, I just want to go to bed at 7 p.m. And he's like, okay, I got wrestling to watch or football to watch or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there's also an intimacy with that, is just the understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have 14 pillars, which you guys, I believe, had that sheet at one point in time. And so we talked about the first 3. And I'm just curious, are there any others on that list that really resonate with you and that are important to you, and why?
I think we go back to communication, though. I think that is, in our past relationships, we did not have that communication with our spouses, or we communicated so differently that it was men are from Mars, women are from Venus, while we found our own planet and created our own ability, our own language through that. But I think, all of the things that are on your pillars, I think, have a play, whether it's the trust, that's important as well, to have a foundation of that, where, if I do go on vacation with girlfriends, or if he goes to a concert with somebody, that we trust that it's not a big deal because he's not cheating and I'm not cheating. And the financial element too, which I think was also brought up, on the pillar, is we probably sound like the most boring couple.
Maybe.
Because we really talk about everything. There's no secrets.
And that goes the conversation, the willingness to have that trust and respect goes very deep, because no matter what it is, whether it's intimacy or finances or commitment, you can talk about anything and it's safe. And when couples feel there's a safety net under them of that commitment, a lot of people think the long-term commitment is conscriptive, or it's choking me and I can't breathe. Really, the commitment, and I can relate because my wife and I have the similar commitment. We're in our 29th year together. It's freeing because I don't have to worry, what is she going to think about this? Is she going to judge me? Is she not going to love me? Is she going to think I'm weird? Or if I share my emotion or how I'm feeling or something I'm struggling with, I don't want to be judged for that. And that's not even a thought.
Oh, he still might think I'm weird, and vice versa. Like there's no judgment, but there still is a little bit of, because I say that at least once a week. This is going to sound weird, but I think I want to do, X, Y, Z.
And usually it's like, all right, that's fine.
And that's trust.
Right. Well, and he's used to the weirdness now, so.
He is
very much so.
Within a month of our relationship, talk about trust, commitment, all of that thing, all of those pillars. I work with the police department, and I work on missing cases and murder cases. And I was working on that when I met him. And so one of the things that he kind of had to come along with me is we were traipsing through fields looking for dead people with the police. So, it takes a special person to say, I'm going to follow her like I am a canine dog looking for a person that had lost their life to put closure for the family.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody would have done that or trusted me or believed in me or, put up with that, because that's weird.
It's different. People say, "Oh, how was your weekend? What did you do over the weekend?" Well, we went to Columbus, Ohio, looking for dead bodies. And they think I'm crazy, but it's like, no, really, we did. No big deal.
But I'm sure you've also seen over the term of your relationship a lot of the things that Kristy has done and has validated while she has been doing it. And so your willingness to be a part of that and help, speaks to her ability and her gift.
Pretty much so. I would say it probably has to be, because like she said, how many people would put up with stuff like that? Or, where it doesn't faze me in the least. I believe her, whatever. I mean, she could be telling me, well, we need to do this or we need to do that because my spirit guide says this is what we need to do. I'm not going to question it.
Oh, and I do.
She does do that.
I do.
Don't drive this way to the office. Don't do this. It's starting to snow. Maybe we shouldn't drive. There might be an accident. Something could happen. And it's not being nervous, worrying about that. It's actually someone or something coming to her and saying, maybe you better not do that. It's not her just worrying, saying, it's snowing outside. Maybe we shouldn't do it.
Sure.
Gotcha. So I'd love to know what non-negotiable self-care practice do you have to be happy and fulfilled and functioning the way you'd like to show up in your relationship? What do you each need in order to show up best for your partner?
Can I start?
You can start. That's fine.
I need sleep. I need my
Sleep.
naps. And I am not myself. I get hangry. I get all of those, things, but I need sleep. He doesn't need as much sleep.
I don't need it. I can go 5-6 hours a night with that much sleep and be fine. And it's always been that way, where I never needed as much as she needs.
What is your non-negotiable? What do you need?
What do I need in order to please you?
Well, to make the relationship healthier. Yeah.
Or to show up to be your best. To be your best for her.
To feel your best.
What's something that you need so you can show up and feel and be the best in the relationship?
Yeah, what do you need, Chuck?
Again, I think it goes back to the understanding. Obviously, I have nothing but the most understanding for her. I realize what she does, what she goes through, how she is, her as a person. So being that I know what to do, what not to do. And again, just being even keeled, just being mellow, I guess, more than anything else.
Now, he was an only child, and I
Right.
was sort of an only child. I have siblings, but they were older. I was so much younger. And I think we both also need alone time. Like, we both
Yeah.
need to decompress. So I can put headphones on and, write or listen to a podcast, and he needs that time to watch sports or you read a comic book
do
or
whatever,
read
yeah.
or what have you too. And there's an understanding that we are better if we're not smothering one
Right.
another, and we don't feel like that is insensitive to say, hey, I need a timeout.
So your recharging is essentially separate, and then it gives you the energy to be able to come back together and be the best for each other.
Yeah, at times, yes.
We're typically still together while we're recharging separately.
We're usually under the same roof. It might not be the same room, but yeah.
Right. I love it. Is there anything that we haven't asked you that we should have asked? Any burning thing you want to tell us?
I will say I am not a mind reader. So the whole, the psychic medium thing, he laughs because, like, again, we can finish one another's sentences.
Right.
But in any relationship, you still have to communicate. And I say this to my friends all the time. If I call them and I'm like, hey, how you doing? They're like, well, is there something wrong? Shouldn't you know what's going on? Shouldn't that? And I'm like, no, I'm not a mind reader. That's not it's not a party trick. I don't do that. So he's so open to understanding that he does have to talk to me, and it's not going to be, me using my spidey senses all the time, because that would be exhausting if I had to do that, and unfair for both of us to do that.
That's true.
Gotcha. Well, you guys have been great. If people want to learn more about the Robinettes or the work that you guys do together or individually, where should they go find more about you?
We have 2 podcasts.
Yes, we do.
Which ones?
We have the Robinette's Nest and
Grave Matters, where we do a little bit more true crime there. And my website's KristyRobinett.com. It is my business. I have been doing intuitive sessions for almost 2 decades professionally. And I love what I do. I love helping people. I love helping people through their grief processes and relationships as well.
And me, I have nothing.
He's retired.
I'm retired. I don't do social media. Everything falls to my lovely, lovely wife. Isn't she amazing, folks?
No, you don't. I wouldn't say that you do nothing. You do a lot in supporting her, and you're her sidekick, no doubt. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm definitely her Ed Norton or Ralph Cramden for sure.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we appreciate you showing up for all the work that you're doing, sort of in this same vein, helping people and being in service to others. It's in your gift, using your gift to assist. Just thank you for all of that. We're grateful.
Love to be with you guys today and look forward to more connections in the future.
Thanks.
Very
Blessings
good.
to you. Thank you.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.